Okay, good morning. It's Wednesdays. I'm Wayne. Welcome to Wednesdays with Wayne. Brought to you by the Real Estate Business School, where you get your license and learn to use it. This is the learn to use it part. Your license guarantees you nothing. You need three types of education to be successful in this world. The first type is technical. It's a technical education required to get your license. But what I mean by it guarantees you nothing is I've been on hundreds of listing presentations and no one's ever asked me the difference between accretion and erosion. So what my sellers typically want to know is, can you market my home? Can you sell it for top dollar? And can you negotiate best price and terms for me? So what the marketplace is saying to me, or what I hear is, I don't care about your technical education, what your exam score was in your final state exam, or any other, your report card, or any of that. I just want to know if you can maximize the value of my property. I want you to have a business education. So that's what I hear. The problem is most of us don't have a business education because our school system does not teach us how to be business people. They don't teach us how to be employers. They teach us how to be employees. So sometimes we have to learn new things, and sometimes we have to unlearn what we think we know is true. So the question is, what if everything you know is wrong? I'm not saying it is. What I'm saying is the world is designed to change, and people are designed to change, and what humans resist the most is that very thing. So this is about change. So if you are where you want to be financially, congratulations, you've done the right things. If you still have a way to go, then thank you for showing up. I appreciate your time. I thank you for your time because a long time ago, a friend of mine said to me, the most valuable thing anyone can give you is their time. So thank you for yours. I'm going to do my best to make sure your time is well spent. So thank you for showing up today. So it's technical education. It's a good foundation, but it's only a foundation. It's like if you're getting a real estate license. It's the memorization of a new language, math formulas, contracts. Extremely important. Most of the lawsuits and complaints to the Real Estate Commission come from contract disputes because agents have not studied contracts and they lack a technical education. They fill them out improperly. They add things they shouldn't add, and they don't add what they should add, and it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So I don't want to discount the technical education. It's crucial to have one. But I also feel like we need a business education. So we've got to go get one. Our public education system didn't give it to us. All this work, be good, do as you're told, get a good job, work hard, make good. It's all a bunch of hooey. 90% of the people in America today, when they hit 65, can't put their hands on $10,000 cash. So when do you judge the success of your education? Graduation or retirement? We've got student loan debt at $1.5 trillion. So we're graduating kids who can't go get jobs to pay their loans back. There's something wrong with that system, and everybody knows it. The question is, what are we going to do? And with this global COVID pandemic, what we're going to see is what we're going to do. So I think there'll be some big changes coming through to education in the very near future. This COVID pandemic has accelerated the direction we were already headed in. So what we're going to go into today is how to take advantage of opportunities. So we need a financial education for that. So it's a technical education that is required to learn, get the fundamentals and the foundation. Secondly, it's the business education to attract clients and serve them and convert them into lifelong customers. The third is financial education. I know agents I was in training with decades ago, still selling houses because they have to. Decades and decades of staring at the greatest source of wealth in the world and never once put anything in their asset column. Never bought one investment property. Looked right at it and sold it to someone else, took their 3%, split it with the IRS, their broker, and their expenses, and put the shekels in their pocket and went about their merry way. Repeat, 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 repeat. Rest of people are a disaster. The wealth in real estate is in owning it, not selling it to someone else. Well, rule number one, stop working for tips. Rule number two, stop using your body to create income. Rule number three, we're in the information age. We're transitioning from the We went from agrarian, where we made and grew things that we needed, to the industrial age, where we operated machines that grew or made things that we needed, to the information age, where you think what you need. You think into reality. You get paid for thinking, not for working. Hard work, highly overrated activity. Will not make you rich, make you very tired. So the key is to optimize every event, to leverage everything to the hilt. By leverage, I mean doing more with less. Money, people, product, technology, all of it. It's all around us, and it's what's wiping out the middle class. It's because it's invisible. We're transitioning from a physical to a metaphysical world, from the visible to the invisible. People can't see the changes occurring all around them. So what we're going to go into today is a subject called investing. This is basic 101 fundamentals. It is a huge subject. We're going to skim it, and I mean skim it. But I'll do my best, just give you some basic fundamentals that I learned over the years. I barely got out of high school. I don't have a degree in finance or accounting. I just know what I know because I've done thousands of business transactions, hundreds of real estate, over 800 real estate transactions, and I've bought and sold over 100 real estate properties. So I know my way around a contract. I know what to look for and what to look out for. I've come a long way. I got a long way to go. But I'm just going to share with you some things that have helped my wife and I become financially independent, and some things that you can do too. Please hear this. Any one of you watching this can do this. So the idea here is you take what is sometimes a complex subject and make it simple. I see some of these instructors out there take a simple subject, make it complex, and make themselves seem smart or important. I'm not like that. I don't want to be the smartest person or important or any of that. I just want to make it simple so you can get the result you want. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to do that today. So thank you for showing up. Those of you not interested in the subject, now you know what it is. You can go watch TV or something. Those of you who are interested, thank you for staying in there. Here's what we're going to do. First thing is understanding what business you're in. As I've said to realtors before, over and over, what business are you in? You've got to understand what business you're in. And this is the magic of studying successful people. This is what Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, knew. He knew what business he was in. He knew what his product was. He knew what who his customer was. He knew who his competition was, and he knew his message. He's very clear on it. And I suggest you get clear on your message. Get clear on what business are you in. I've told these realtors, houses have nothing to do with residential real estate. If it was the house, it'd only be one of them. There'd only be one floor plan. It's not the house. That's one thing. Two, throw away the sold signs, because you never sold anybody a house. You showed them houses until they chose one. The sign should be chosen by the Johnsons, not sold by Joe the Ragman. So what business are you in when you're investing? Risk management. The key is to manage your risk. I guarantee you, that's what business your lender's in, and they're clear on it. So I'll ask you this also. When is your profit made in real estate? That's right. Typically when you buy. So if you pay too much and you borrow too much, there's nothing anyone can do for you. So the way to manage or mitigate your risk is attach value to the asset. So we're making money with our mind now, not with our body. And we're going to figure out how to attach value. So there's three types of value. To me, when I look at a piece of property, I see three types of value. There's the value that the seller is asking. Let's call that, I hate to call it fair market value because typically it's not. But let's call it fair market value to start with. Then there's, let's say it's a distressed property we can add value to, increase the value of, and that's how we make our money. That's the profit, is adding value to the asset. So then you have future value or after repaired value. So the seller's asking X, and the future is going to be worth Y, but we want to offer less. So this is sales price. So there's a difference between sales price and value. Value is what it could be worth on the open market, fair market value. What's the definition? What a willing buyer is willing to pay and a willing seller will sell for, neither being under duress. Well, the problem is I like duress. I'm looking for a problem property with a problem seller, something I can buy in the market, add value to, and increase that value. So you have fair market value. Let's say you find this fourplex and the seller's asking $750. You think it's worth $700. You think the future value is $800. So you have the market value, the value $750, the sales price $700, and the future value $800. Okay, $750 you bought it for, give or take $750 value, and then $800 future value. We're going to increase, add value, increase the value. We're going to do it like going through this APOD formula, annual property operating data form. It's the P&L for the property. So we're going to do this the same way you do the P&L that you have for your company and the P&L you have for your house, your personal P&L. You should have a set of corporate books, financial statements, profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow statement. What does profit and loss tell you? What you did. What's the financial? What does the balance sheet tell you? What you have. What's the cash flow statement tell you? Where your money went. What you did, what you have, where the money went. The APOD is a P&L for the property. So how do we increase value to our business? How do we increase income to our homes, to our personally? How do we increase or add value to a property? You get your income up and your expenses down. Simple. Very simple. Get the income up. Get those expenses down. Okay. So we're going to look at this. So there's present value, future value, and what you're going to pay. I'll give you an example. You can't bake future value into the present value. I had this student from my mentoring program call me last week. They said, okay, we've got this property we're selling. We've got it based at a 5 cap property. I'm going to explain to you what that is. I don't mean to use jargon and acronyms that confuse people. I'm going to explain what cap rates mean. Before this is over, you'll be clear on them. I'm just telling you the story, so bear with me, okay? Thank you. We're going to sell this thing on a 5 cap. We think it's $550, and now the seller's gotten another agent that says that that's too low, that the future value of the property is more than that, and he should price it at that today. I'm like, what are you, crazy? You can't bake the future value into the present value. That's the reason they're called different things. You have present value. What is it worth today? You can't take what it's going to be in 6 months or a year or 5 and make that the price today. I mean, that's crazy. That's like taking a house and going, okay, with depreciation, it's going to, it's $500,000 today. It's going to be worth $650 in 8 years. So yeah, $650 today. No. God. So this whole thing about attaching value seems to be a big subject. If you pay too much, you borrow too much. There's nothing anyone can do for you. So remember, if you want to get rich, no matter what's houses or whatever, never pay retail. Negotiate everything. How much is the lettuce? Okay, so here's how we attach value. In residential, there's 2 ways. You can see this, right? Okay, good. In residential, there's 2 ways. There's the comparative market analysis, also known as a CMA. This is what we as realtors and brokers and agents do to attach value to an asset. Someone's decided they want to sell their property through a distress sale or deciding to move up. Maybe it's too small. Whatever the reason is, we've got to figure out what it's worth. Well, how are we going to do that? We're going to compare it. We're going to compare this property to other properties in the area. In the area, similar properties in the area that have sold at this time. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into this little club we own. I misspoke. We're going to this little club that we belong to called the Multiple Listing Service. This is why I'm doing my best to tell you insider trading is legal in real estate because we know how to attach value. I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm just being kind of tongue-in-cheek and facetious about the home. But it's true because we're going to see the best deals first because they're in MLS. The public doesn't have access to this. As realtors, if you're paying board dues, you do. So what do you know? What you know in there is you have your subject property. Now, how do you do a CMA? You take your subject property, you find other properties located geographically close to it that are active on the market now. That's your competition. Properties that have sold. This determines market value, what buyers are willing to pay for similar properties in this area at this time. And then you have expired listings. Now, this is one of the highest markets we've ever been in. How would something expire? How does a house not sell? It's simple. It was overpriced and undermarketed. If it's overpriced and undermarketed, it expires. It dies for some reason. So you have these sold comps are the most important comparables are the sold comparables. These people are hoping, these people are wishing they hired a different realtor. So this is CMA. So when you're out there as realtors, I'm talking to you now, what you do on the CMA is you're going to have 3 of these, you're probably going to have 3 of these, and you're probably going to have 3 of these. Well, to get these 3, you're probably going to look at 10 to choose which 3 you're going to use. To come up with your 3 sold properties, you're probably going to look at 10 of those to get the 3 that are most similar to the subject property, and you're going to probably look at 10 expired properties to get the 3 that most closely match the subject property. We want to compare. You can't do a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-story on an acre to a 3-2, 1-story on a 60-foot lot. There's 2 totally different properties. They're not comparable. They're not similar. They got to be similar. Same. Not same, similar. So when you look at these, you're going to look at 30 properties to do 1 CMA. What I'm suggesting, ladies and gentlemen, especially you agents out there, my suggestion is if you want to make a bunch of money in real estate, kick the buyers out of your car, refer them to someone else, and never put them in your car again unless they have address and cash. Focus on listing property. If you'll do 3 listing presentations a week, 3 a week, no matter what, come hell or high water, 3 listing presentations a week. In 6 months, you'll be knee-deep in cash. Well, to get these, for sure, 6 months is all it takes. 3 a week, no matter what. And do them like this. Well, if you're doing 3 a week, that means you're looking at 30 of these, you're looking at 30 of these, and you're looking at 30 of these. So what happens is, you're looking at 90 properties a week. Guess what happens when you look at 90 properties a week? You're going to find a value-add property in there. You're going to find a fixer-upper. You're going to find the stress sell in there somewhere. I guarantee you it's going to happen. So this is how you value them, and this is how you find them. Get a license, join your local board, look in MLS, and find active properties on the market that are way below market. So this is one way to establish value in residential. Comparative market analysis. CMA, active comps, sold comps, expired comps. Properties that are comparable to the subject property. I don't care what city you're from, or what state you're from, or what country you're from. If you came to Austin, Texas, where I am, and I took you into any neighborhood in the city, any community, anywhere, if we looked at 10 properties that were on the market, active listings, if we walked into the 11th property, would we get kind of a feeling if it was below, at, or above market? You kind of get a sense of value, right? Well, when you look at 30 that are active and 30 that are sold and 30 expired, you get really good at attaching value to the asset. And when you do 3 of those a week, you do them for month after month after month after month for years on end, you can attach value like that. It's really fast. So this is the benefit of having a license. Yes, you should get one. And then you have access to multiple listing service. So CMA is one way to attach value in residential real estate. The other way is with an appraisal. Almost the same process, takes a different license. They're much more detailed, and of course, they cost money. So when you do an appraisal or you pay to have one done, you're going to get 3 different approaches to value. So one is the sales approach, the comparison approach. It's just like this. So one thing the appraiser will do is they'll do their CMA. They're going to look at active, sold, and expired comparables. Which ones give the most weight to value? Sold. Sold determine value. Buyers determine value, not sellers. Sorry, sellers. Then they do the cost approach, which, I don't know, if you're building new, I guess you should know. I think probably insurance companies would want to know, in case it burns down, what's it going to cost to rebuild that sucker. But as a buyer, I'm more interested in this than this. I don't really care what it costs to build it. Hopefully I'm buying it for less than that. And then you'll get the income approach, which if you're going to rent it out would be good information to have, but otherwise irrelevant. Nonetheless, you'll get these 3 approaches to value, and that's how they do an appraisal. These are the 2 ways to attach value to residential real estate. In commercial, it takes a little bit of a bend. So in commercial, it's difficult to compare properties because very few commercial buildings are identical. In fact, very few are identical. In fact, I've never seen 2 that are identical. Most of them are, okay, that's not true because I have seen some identical. Echelon is identical. There's some that they'll buy in clusters like commercial condos. They're identical. But aside from that, when you look at different building stock and purposes of property and why they were built and what their usages are, you'll find that it's difficult to use a comparison approach in real estate because there's not enough volume of comparable properties that are similar to justify a value. It's very difficult to value a 10-story office building with multiple tenants and 200 parking spaces to a single tenant user building with 6,000 or 10,000 feet with 30 or 70 parking spaces. It's too difficult to do them because they're not comparable. So what we're going to do in commercial is we're going to value the income stream. What is the value of the income stream? So we're going to take today's money and we're going to buy future money with it. So we need to know present value and future value. We're going to take some capital that we have, we're going to borrow some capital, and then we're going to acquire this asset that's going to throw off cash flow. We want to know the value of that income stream. To do that, we're going to use, there are a lot of different ways to do this. But I'm going to do my best today to explain capitalization rate, or cap rates as they're typically called. So let's say that you find this, like I said, this office building, or let's say there's 2 fourplexes. Let's say that the seller wants $750 for them. Let's say that you think you can get them to $800, but you want to pay $700, and you do. So we've got 2 fourplexes as our subject property. We have 8 units. Let's say they rent for $1,200 a piece. So you brought your HP 10B2 calculator right out. Well, get your calculator out. If you go 1,200 times 8, then we see we're going to have a $9,600 a month income. Well, what's the name of the form we're going to use? Annual Property Operating Data Form. Keyword being annual. So we'll multiply that times 12, and now we know that this property is going to produce $115,000 a year in gross rental income. So let's start doing some easy little calculations. We're going to get our annual property operating data form. We're going to learn some acronyms. This is GRI, gross rental income, also referred to as PRI, AKA, I know you know what AKA means, potential rental income. So you have gross rental income, you have potential rental income. It's top line revenue on a P&L. It's the gross income, top line. If we have our 2 fourplexes, our 8 units at $1,200 a piece, at $9,600 a month, at 12 months, we're going to have $115,200 a year in gross income. Well, we have some vacancies. Yepers, there's going to be some tenants making their midnight moves. You're going to go in there, and like I said, there's three types of people in the world. There are those that make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who ask, what happened? And you're going to go to your property someday and see a vacant hole. You're going to go, what happened? What happened is they blew out of there. Now you got to go in there and clean it up and haul the stuff off they didn't want anymore. Probably maybe do some floor repair or replacement. Maybe do some paint. Maybe patch some holes. I don't know. I had one tenant one time we evicted. He got so mad at us that he pulled and disconnected the upstairs toilet feed line, the incoming water line, and then walked out the front door. So he was really, really angry. I didn't want to go near him because I was afraid he was going to beat the crap out of me, so I stayed away. And a couple days later, I went by there. The whole building's that deep in water. The ceiling's hanging in. Like, what happened? Looks like it's leaking. It was a mess. So we're going to have vacancy. I typically plug in 5%. There's no magic number, no rule of thumb. Right now in the market we're in Austin, Texas, and most of Central Texas, we're at 97, 98% occupancy, 99. Some properties are full with waiting lists. It's a good time to be a seller. It's a good time to be an owner. It's a good time to be a landlord. But anyway, I plug in 5%. I'd rather err and put too much here than not enough. If I'm going to be surprised, I'd like for it to be a pleasant one. So I put 5%. So 5% is $57.60. That leaves us with our GOI, our other new acronym. This is gross operating income. So for example, if this were your P&L for your company, this would be gross revenue, this would be cost of goods, and this would be gross profit. Then you have your expenses on your P&L for your property called your APOD. It's gross rental income, vacancy and credit losses, and then vacancy and credit losses, and then gross operating income or gross profit if it was a P&L. Then you're going to have your expenses. The expenses of this property are, let's say there's $67,000. I could detail them, but in the essence of time, let's just say they're about $67,000. So expenses are going to be insurance, taxes, maintenance, repairs, commissions, some utilities, maybe a management fee, lawn fee, garbage fees, everything it takes to operate the property. So then when you subtract your expenses from your gross operating income, you're going to get your net operating income on your corporate or business, on your corporate or personal P&L. This would be your net profit. On your APOD, it's NOI. This is your income before debt service. So it's not a net number, it's net operating income, not net income. Net operating income. 42,440. Your debt comes out of that. We don't calculate debt into cap rate calculations. Debt has nothing to do with value. You can pay cash, you can leverage a thing to the hilt. That's got nothing to do with how the property operates. It'll affect your cash flow, obviously, because the more debt you have, the lower your cash flow is going to be. The less debt you have, the higher cash flow you're going to have. So debt will affect cash flow. It will not affect your operating. It's not an expense of operating the property. Okay, I get this a lot. What about the debt? What about it? It's got nothing to do with it. You with me so far? I think your silence says a yes. So this is how we fill out our annual property operating data form. When we get our leases, when we write our contracts, when your commercial contracts, you go to there's a page near the back of the contract that lists all the addendum and all the things that you'd like for the seller to produce. So if you have residential, you've got to go to special provisions, and Trek hates this. Trek hates it when you write in special provisions. The reason why is because those contracts are pre-printed, and as realtors, we're just supposed to fill in the blanks. We're not supposed to be practicing law. You're creating a legal document. You're practicing law. You're giving it to people to sign. You're practicing law. So they want to keep it to a minimum. They don't want us filling in anything in special provisions. So if it's pre-printed in the contract, do not write anything in special provisions. Okay, my realtor friends? Don't write in there. However, if you're buying a small investment property like a duplex or a fourplex, and there's not a commercial form for it, then you've got to put some things in special provisions. And what we want to do is we want to get a look at this property to see how risky it is, and to verify the numbers that are on the APOD form. This APOD form, some of your commercial brokers will send you one of these, but it's not called an APOD form. They're going to call it a pro forma. And if you read the bottom, it says information deemed reliable, but not guaranteed. Not guaranteed. It is absolutely not guaranteed. So what that means is, caveat emptor, you learned this phrase early on, buyer beware. You've got to do your due diligence. The onus is on you. So sellers typically want to pay the most and tell us nothing and make no concessions. Buyers want to pay the least, learn everything they can, and get the most concessions from the seller. We are 180 degrees diametrically opposed in this transaction. So we've got to do our due diligence. We've got to ask the right questions. So what do we want when we're in our due diligence or our option period? Do we want rent rolls? Yes. Do we want leases? Yes. Do we want financial statements? Yes. So we ask for these. Typically, I like to get a couple years. So as of the date of this recording, we're in late August of this year. So I would probably want year to date. If I could get all of 29 year to date, that would probably be enough to tell me the story of the property. If they were earlier in this year, in the first quarter, I'd probably want 18, 19, and 20. So I just want to get a clear picture. I want to see what those leases really say. I want to see when they terminate. If it's a duplex, it's no big deal. If it's 50 units, you got some due diligence to do. If it's like this, it's just a couple fourplexes, it won't take you long. But this is a simple little deal anyone can do. So we want to get this information, and we want to start verifying these numbers. So if they're on we want to start verifying these numbers. So if they're on the pro forma that the listing broker sends us, he got them from the seller, they may be perfectly, totally 100% accurate, and they may be missing a digit or two. So I got to go find out. So this is what we want to do, is get our rough calculations. The APOD will have all these expenses in detail. We have 2 classes that will teach this. It's called Know Your ROI Before You Buy. So if you want to go to our website, buildmyrebusiness.com, buildmyrebusiness.com, and go to the continuing education, the CE, continuing education section of the website, you'll see these two videos called Know Your ROI Before You Buy. There's one and there's two because it took 4 hours to get through both of these. I'm going to skim it in about an hour, hopefully. So if you want to learn more, that's where you can go, and they're recorded, and I think you'll really like them. You could pause it, rewind them. It's fairly user-friendly. So if you want to know more, that's a way to know more. So how do we attach this value? We've got our gross income. We've allowed for vacancies because we're going to have them. We've got our gross operating income. We've calculated our expenses in pretty good detail. We'll know more when we see the seller's profit and loss because they may be a little less than truthful to us, but they're not lying to the IRS. So if you look at those P&Ls, get those tax returns if you can, and look at, see, their actual numbers, then you'll know what those expenses are, and then you'll know your net operating income, okay? So let's say you take this net operating income. How do you calculate the capitalization rate? Well, what we said was the seller's asking $750. We think we can get it to $800. We're going to buy it for $700. So we go back and forth and we negotiate. Negotiations sometimes take time. Don't get in a hurry. Okay, I sold 2 office buildings last year because I thought it was time, and luckily I did. And I didn't see this coming. It was just intuition. I'm not saying I saw this pandemic coming. I did not. And it wasn't my fault either, for those of you who are thinking that. But I did sell them. And we got the buyers up over $400,000 over a 29-day negotiating period. So it took time. I've been negotiating on a parcel and trying to buy for 10 weeks now. And the back and forth and back and forth. And the sellers have just agreed to our terms. We negotiated a new learning management platform. That was a 10-week negotiation. And so don't get in a hurry when you're negotiating. Okay, take your time. It's worth it. It's time well spent. So we agreed on a final sales price of $700,000. If you'll take your net operating income of $42,440, and you divide it by what you paid, $700,000, which is now the value because that's what we paid for it, you get 0.06. So what that tells us is good stick'em. $42,440 divided by 700,000. This is how cap rates work. There we go. So you take 440 divided by 700,000, you're going to get 0.06. Well, what does that mean and what does it tell us? Well, let me give some examples. Let's just pretend that we would be willing to pay, I'll say this, okay? Please hear this. Every investment, every property is unique to every investor. It's good to have your own criteria because I can't tell you what's good and bad because what's good for you might be bad for me, and what I think is a great deal you might turn up your nose at. So it's hard to get a rule of thumb. So I think if we have an understanding of how cap rates work, then we can decide how they work and what they tell us. It's just like a P&L, right? It tells you what you did. But a balance sheet tells you what you have. There's a correlation. There's a relationship between the two. And then you can pull a cash flow statement in there. The question you've got to ask is, who has my money? And when you look at a P&L and you look at a profit and loss or P&L, which tells you what you did with your money, and then you look at your financial statement, which tells you what you bought with your money, and you look at your cash flow statement that tells you where your money went, you'll see who's got your money. Okay? So, you'll see it in APOD 2. We have profit, loss, balance sheet, cash flow statement. And we track how cash flows through from the poor, the middle class, and the rich. And they can show you on a simple piece of flip chart paper why the rich get richer, because they do. And there's a reason, and there's a method, and they have a formula. And you can use the same formula. It's not copyrighted. They make their money in their businesses, and they hold it in real estate. So, let's look at cap rates for a few minutes. Let's play with this, and let's see if we can make some sense of it. So, let's say that you are a realtor and you have a buyer comes to town and says, I'll buy anything 5 cap or higher. Higher cap rate. So if you take, this is all net operating income based. So we start with our 42,440 net operating income. And let's divide that by 0.04. And what we're going to get is $1,061,000 or $1,060,000. $1,060,000. If you had a buyer willing to pay a 4% to obtain a 4% cap rate on a property that had a $42,440 NOI, they would be willing to pay $1,061,000 for it, or $1,060,000, whatever you get. Don't worry about the one. So 42,440 divided by 0.05, 5% cap rate. If you had a buyer who says, look, I'll pay 5, I'm not going to go as high as a 4% cap. I'm not a 4 cap buyer. I'm not going to buy a property with only a 4% cap. I got to have at least a 5% cap rate. That 42,440 becomes a value of 848,800 to that buyer. The next buyer unique says, look, don't show me anything south of 6. If I can't get a 6 cap or better, not buying. I'll wait till the market corrects or cools off. Well, 42,440 times 0.06. This buyer values this property at 707 and change. A 7 cap buyer will pay you 606 and change. And you got some that say, look, I'm 8. This is 0. I just made a typo. An 8 cap buyer says, look, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing 7.6. I'm not doing it. I'll buy anything you've got sight unseen A cap all day long. Put it under contract, get it to me. So what are we noticing? What are we noticing here? The lower the cap rate, the higher the price or the value. The higher the cap rate, the lower the price, which if you buy for that, that's the value. Every property is unique to every investor. So what could one of your formulas be? Buy on an 8, sell on a 6. Buy on a 7, sell on a 5. Buy a 6 cap property and sell it for 4. I'm actually working on a transaction right now. It's starting to look like it's going to pencil out when it's finished at a 6% cap. And we anticipate we'll sell on a 4. That's how cap rates work. So what do cap rates tell us? Number 1 is they tell us demand. What are cap rates doing in Central Texas right now? It's unbelievable. And demand through the roof. This tells us demand. If they're willing to pay that for that, they're willing to pay that much money for that much NOI. That told me there's a lot of competition. So what do we know about the economy? We know there's supply, we know there's demand, and we know it affects price. Right? Right. So right now, the supply is fairly low. The demand is fairly high. What does price follow? The supply is low, the demand is high. Price follows demand, right? So this is what's happening. There are tens of thousands of units on the books, permitted, and they're building them as quickly as possible because rents are high, all-time high. To me, it also tells you the risk. And what I mean by that is, if we can buy into the point of view, if you can buy into the point of view that your profit's made when you buy, then where's this going to go from here? Is it got to go to 3? 2? I mean, where do you go from here? There's not really there's not too far to go from here. So I'm kind of in here. I'd love to get one of these. So would 20 million other people. So you got to really be inside to get one of these. But it's possible. So hopefully I'm in here, and I can sell it in here. There's going to be another 0 or 3 on the end of these. But so that's what it tells us, demand, risk. It also tells you the value. Again, you take your 42,440, you divide it, there are your values. You decide what your criteria is. Are you willing to pay 4% cap rate, get a 4% cap rate for a property, 4% return? It also tells you the return if you pay cash. So these are the 3 things that cap rates tell us: the demand, the risk, the value, and the return if you pay cash. So when we talk about attaching value to asset, all right, I may be over conservative, but the only thing I know about the economy, it's going to do this. It's going to go here, and it's going to go there, and it's going to do this. And it's been up here for a while. And there's times in my life I couldn't sleep because I owned too much real estate. It wasn't that long ago, 2008, 9, 10. Now I can't sleep because I don't own enough. But I think if you can acquire these properties somewhere in here, and you can sell them somewhere in here, dispose of them, you're really, really smart and really, really lucky. And sometimes you just hold them. Hope that makes sense. Okay, that's it for today. CMA, appraisal, cap rates. Next week we'll go into another internal rate of return. There are a few other ways to measure this. So next week we'll have the APOD in detail. will show you all the expenses associated with this property. I'll give you a picture of it. I'll have it up here. We'll have the APOD, all the expenses. We'll do cash on cash, how to calculate the cash that goes into the property, how to pull cash out of the property, how much goes in, how much comes out. In first year, you're going to have a bulk of cash, several buckets. You'll have your down payment, your lender fees, your title company fees, whatever you spent in your due diligence period. If it's something residential, you're probably doing an inspection. I hope you're doing an inspection. I'm going to tell you should be doing an inspection. If it's something commercial, you might be doing a phase 1 environmental study to make sure there's no underground storage tanks or any harmful things left on the property. Those will be some cash items you'll be out of pocket for. That's cash going into the property. So we're going to measure how much money goes into the property versus how much comes out year 1. Then we're going to calculate your cash on cash return, both before and after tax. Because you may pay tax, you may not pay tax, you may figure out how to offset your gains. There are ways to do that. I'm not an accountant. You'll need one, a really good one. I don't give accounting or legal advice. The only accounting advice I give is get a good accountant. And the best legal advice I can give you is get a good attorney. I have 3, intellectual property attorney, a business attorney, and a real estate attorney. And I call them before I get sued, not in the middle of a lawsuit. And the goal is to keep from getting sued and to protect my downside. Mitigate my risk by having my lawyer look at my title commitment, my survey, my contract on every transaction I do. Because you never know when you might miss a blank or make a mistake and catch it while you're in your option period. Okay, so next week we'll do cash on cash return, and then that's the cash that goes into the property year 1. Well, year 2, cash doesn't go in the property. You may have to feed it, and year 3, cash doesn't go in the property. It just bulk goes in to acquire it, but once you acquire it, well, how do you measure your returns after that? That's internal rate of return. It's the return on the money, on the investment, the time it was in the investment. Okay? So then cash on cash return is the ratio between the cash it took to acquire the property as compared to the cash that came back out of the property, the return. So there are ways to there are ways to attach value, and then there are ways to measure your return. And we're going to go over both in more detail next week. I think we can do this in an hour, and hopefully you'll be clear about it at the end of that time. How do we attach value to the asset? What are the ways? What are the examples? How specifically do we do that? And then how do we measure our return? And as W.C. Field says, I hear he's quoted with us, I'm not so concerned about return on my investment as I am the return of my investment. So we'll look at both, the return of and return on. Because investors want to know several things. How much money goes in and when? Is it acquisition or during the holding period? Or both? What I mean by during the holding period, sometimes we have to feed these properties. Sometimes they go vacant or don't perform. We have to write checks to hold them. That will happen. Look, you're going to lose money on some of these. I'm telling you right now. You show me an investor that's never lost any money, I'll show you somebody that hadn't bought very much. There's a company called Cabela's on the freeway between Austin and San Marcos. And there was a farmhouse out there, and we were buying lots in East Austin for $20,000 for anybody who knew East Austin was even over there. And we buy a house and move it on there, buy the house for $5,000, pay another $5,000 to move it in, put 20 or 30 in it, and sell them for 140, 150 all day long. They're 300 to 500 now. So we were a little early, but we did okay. And I bought this house and I couldn't get it into Austin. It was too tall. Stupid, right? So watch what I do and do the opposite. You'll be in great shape. Anyway, I bought a house for $5,000 and lost money on it. I mean, who knew you could lose money on a $5,000 house? But I figured out a way. So I've made some, I've lost some, I've made more than I've lost, and so here I am. So these are the things I've learned, hopefully are helping. How do we attach value? How do we avoid getting ourselves in the situation we worship? How do we avoid owning properties we hate? And how do we measure our returns once we acquire them? And then how us that can do the work and help us get this, acquire these assets, get them, increase their value, and then dispose of them. Okay? It's a mental process. So we're transitioning from physical to metaphysical, from body to mind. Hard work is highly overrated. Thinking is the hardest work there is, as Ford says. That's why so few people engage in it. So if this interests you, I'll see you next week. I'll end the way I began. Thank you for your time. I hope you found it was well spent. We're going to continue to do our best to make sure that your time is well spent. So thank you for showing up, and I'll see you next week. Have a great day.